So my name is Devlin Smith. I'm a first-year administration resident at MD Anderson Cancer Center, and I'm here today to talk to you about Project Closeout. And this is part two. We'll talk a little bit about step 5 that Drs. Claire McLean and Josh Blackwell talked about last week, and then I'll cover a new 6 through 10. So the goal of project closure is really, like we talked about, tying everything in a bow. So you want to make sure that everything in your project, is ready to go, is ready to be handed off. Oftentimes, the project manager is going to be someone that implements a project, so they're responsible for getting it going, getting it live, making it functional, maybe optimizing it a little bit, but not really managing it long term. They don't deal with, the longevity of the project. Their goal is just to get everything wrapped up in enough of a bow to hand it off to the next person. And I want to start with asking y'all to kind of imagine with me real quick. So is everyone familiar with this car type and this guy on the screen? Tesla. Yeah, so this is Tesla. So this is Elon Musk in the bottom right corner. And Elon Musk, even though he's a visionary and entrepreneur and a million other things, is also a project manager. And the reason I say that is because he manages many different projects. He manages SpaceX. He manages the development of different car models. He develops all these different, utilities, resources for many different companies at this point. I think he's dabbled in just about every new element of tech at this point. So what I'm going to ask you to do today is put on your Elon Musk hat, so your classic millennial entrepreneur uniform of all black, and add some creativity to it, and work through these next 5 steps as project manager Elon Musk. All right, so Claire and Josh mentioned that closure conversations, or conversations, a final touch base was part of this. That was their kind of step 5. My 6th step is to have closure conversations. And what I mean by a closure conversation is that conversation that kind of recaps everything at the end. So we're really great at doing, initiation of projects, about, keeping communication throughout, but people often miss this step, and it's really vital because it kind of sets the stage for everything that's to come afterwards. So the closure conversation is going to happen with your staff, may happen with the people that you report to, happens with your stakeholders, and it's really just acquiring information about how did things go? What did we learn from this? Did we learn what to do, what not to do? Did things blow up at some point? How could we have avoided that? Asking about the team. Was the team cohesive? Especially if this is the team that you're going to work with more in the future, you want to see, did our personalities align? Did our talents align well? Did we work well on this project and really, all stay engaged throughout the entirety of it? These are some questions that you really want to ask. And the 2 major questions that you want to think about are, what will we keep the same? So going forward, new project, or if you were to recreate this project you just finished, what would you keep the same? This is the what went well type of thing. And then what would you have changed? So tying back into what did we learn, were things appropriate, did we follow our timeline? Really an overcap of what we could do better for the next time, or how we could improve things for the next project or the next group of key stakeholders that we'll work with. Then I want to note this. So with project closure, this is not your goal. So we want to tie it in a bow, right? But that tying in a bow doesn't mean this is a really ugly, crappy bow and I'm going to throw it to you now. So you don't want to make your project someone else's problem. That is not the goal of this. It's part of the reason that we have these closure conversations, to make sure that everything is tied together. But like I said, don't make your project someone else's problem at the end. So step 7, your Elon Musk hat is particularly useful for this. You want to hand over the keys. So when he's working on a car, right, you spend probably years, decades, however long they spend in project, like the implementation, development, and then you get to a point where it's time to roll it off the assembly line and hand someone else the keys, which is exactly what you want to do with project management. You've tied everything in a bow, it's ready to go, everything is set up, the expectations have been met, and you've communicated with the team that's going to take this over. So this is the point at which you hand over the keys and give it to the next team. This is really, really relevant when we're talking about projects that are going to be managed long term. So as a project manager, I mentioned that a lot of times you are going to be responsible for the implementation and maybe some optimization, but you want everything to be ready for the next people to get in your Tesla, probably push a button and everything work exactly as they need it to. So you want to think a little bit ahead of time. How can I set things up? How can I set up this project documentation? How can I inform them what they need to do to be most successful with this project? Then we have step 8, which is probably my favorite because I like parties. So you want to celebrate success. You've had a team that you've worked with for probably a long while. We've all, can raise your hands how many people have closed out or at least managed a project here? I know all of you have, so I'm just going to go with 100%. So especially if you've worked with a team though, right? Some projects can take a really long time. So if you've had one that's ongoing for 5 or 10 years, that can drag on quite a bit, right? So when you get to the end and you're thinking through these things that you learned in the closure conversations and you've handed over the keys, you really want to thank your team members for everything they've contributed. This is a great opportunity to, from the administrative perspective, increase engagement, increase employee satisfaction, and really to bring your team back together. We know that things get stressful, right, when you're managing projects and you're trying to get things done and everything's crazy and you're having to flex and work long hours. So this is really the time that you can take to clear the air, create a fresh space, and really just celebrate the ending of this big crazy thing that you've just accomplished. The way that you celebrate success could obviously vary. Some people do parties, some people do gifts. Oprah likes cars. Yes, shoes if that's your preference. So this is the time to really sit back for you as a leader and think of what drives your team and what is going to help your team reach that new creative positive space that they need to be set up in for you to tackle your next goal or tackle your next project. So then step 9 is deciding on the future. So we've talked about all the closure communications and conversations, and then handing over the keys, right? You've handed over that project to the next person. Then you've celebrated the immense success of this project that you just finished, and you've handed it off to the management team and hopefully heard back that things are going smashingly. So now what do we do with our time, right? We're busy people, we like working on things, we like having projects, which is where step 9 comes in, deciding on a future direction. This step can actually tie back to step 8 in that sometimes your celebrations or celebrating success can be a good point in time to kind of throw out a teaser of the next project coming down the line. But as a project team lead or as a leader of a project team, you really need to decide where you're headed next. At a place like a hospital, sometimes this is already handed to you, and then sometimes you have to be the visionary. So again, tying back to step 8, this is a great thing to piggyback off of. Everyone's in a great mood, they're creative, they're engaged again, they're satisfied with what they're doing at work. So pull in those creative juices and decide where you're going. This is the time for brainstorming sessions if you need them. If you don't already have a next project in mind, you think about what is our mission, why are we here, why do we exist? You think about your vision, so where do we need to be headed, what path do we need to be going down? And then you can decide on your next project from there. If you're already actually handed a project, it can make it a little bit easier. Maybe you figure out how to tailor that project to your team's strengths, or you swap up the team, or you really set the stage for the next piece. So then we have step 10, and I'm following back up with this as the last step because even though a project manager is going to be responsible for the implementation and for a lot of the go live, maybe some optimization, even after you've celebrated your successes and you've moved on to the next project, doesn't necessarily mean that you want to completely drop it. So it's a really good idea to keep in touch as well, especially if you've handed this off to someone else within your organization. Some recommendations for this are, put some calendar invites together. So maybe you check up with them quarterly, you check up with them monthly for the first little bit. Depending on the scope of the project, how big it was, how many people are involved, you just want to see how things are going. We talk a lot about, transitions of care in pharmacy. This is kind of a transition in project care, if you will. So you want to make sure that whoever is taking it over next is successful with it. Maybe there's something that you can add, that would help them manage it a little bit better, or maybe you have some insight that could help them solve some problems that they're encountering with managing the project itself. So the 2 big ways to do this, you can communicate any way you need. You can set calendar invites, you could schedule phone calls, you can have recurring meetings. But the really big important thing is that you make sure that line of communication is still open. And I think this is also really, really relevant if you have key stakeholders here. So making sure that even 6 months, a year, 18 months out, when this project is really, really just getting fully going, that your key stakeholders are still really happy with the way it's progressing. If not, that gives you an opportunity to show up, be a great leader, and help them problem solve and take it to the next level if they need to. And that is all I have on project closure. So as you can see, project closure, we went over 10 basic steps for it. These are not in any way all-inclusive. Project closure can be a messy, dynamic, chaotic moment in project management, but it's really important to make sure that you finish out on a good note, that you take care of your team, and that you really celebrate your success and learn from the process. Thank you very much.